All right. So good morning or afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to the CPS HR Consulting October webinar series. As usual, I'm your moderator today for today's session. My name is Marissa, and I'm with CPS HR Consulting, and I am thrilled to have you join us. Today, we have an exciting session planned for you. We're diving into the art of presenting with impact and passion. Our guest speaker, Dr. Janet Lockhart-Jones, is a CPS HR training facilitator and project manager, and she'll be guiding us through this valuable topic today. Just a quick reminder and housekeeping for you all. Today's session is being recorded so that those who cannot attend live can catch up at another time. You will be able to find the recording later today on the CPS HR website. And then lastly, before we begin, we kindly request that you please remain on mute throughout the presentation unless asked. Should you have any questions during the presentation, you may type them into the chat box, or you can hold them on to the end of the till the end of the session if time allows for questions. Now, without further ado, Janet, the virtual floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marissa. And hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on your respective time zone. I am Dr. Janet Lockhart-Jones. I am new to the CPHR family, but I am not new to the speaking industry. On the screen in front of you, you have a little bit of bio and experience background about me. 10 years in the federal government in IT and process improvement consulting, 10 years in the private sector, entrepreneur since 2004, former adjunct professor. I'm an ICF certified coach at the PCC level. I am a paid public speaker, leadership development expert. I'm certified in DISC, emotional intelligence, insights discovery, and a few other assessments. And I've worked with leaders all over the globe. And my passion, my true passion, is really delivering solutions that elevate talent and drives leaders to pursue their full potential. So the program that we're talking about today is really part of a track. And this is the Communicating with Impact track. And it's targeted for anyone in a manager, executive, leader, HR, or other role, which requires strong communication and the ability to connect with audiences and be very persuasive and influential. So as you can see on the left side of the screen, presenting with impact is just one of the 5. So let me share with you the agenda. The 1 hour that we're going to spend together today is really part of a 2-hour program. However, if you want the full 2-hour program, then of course, I'm sorry, not 2-hour, 2-day program. Let me correct that again. Today's 1-hour segment is really a part of a longer 2-day program that can be offered by CPS HR. So I want to share with you a little bit about what you could get in the 2-day program. So today, time permitting, we'll make it through module 1. Which is really serves as a presentation primer. We're going to talk about character, logic, and emotion, and how they really play into being persuasive when you communicate. We'll talk about the 3 principles of presenting, and then also, we probably won't get to this piece because this is really targeted more for the entire class. But in this program, there's an opportunity for you to evaluate your presentation skills. So that's just module 1. And remember, time permitting, we'll get through all of module 1. Taking the longer program, module 2, talks about the structure. And we start by asking, what's the point? What's the point that you really want to make with your audience? And mind you, the title of this is Presenting with Impact. So presenting could be also presenting / speaking, because even when you are in a one-on-one conversation, perhaps with your boss, with peers, with your direct reports, you still want to speak with impact, right? You want to create a connection. So in module 2, we go into that aspect about what's the point? What's the point that you're trying to make? What is the point that you want people to walk away from this with? The second thing is knowing your audience. And what does that mean? Researching your topic, creating your structure, and visualizing ideas. So even though this program is focused on presenting with impact, it also applies to giving a 1-hour speech, standing in front of an audience of 200 people and speaking on a specific topic, having a one-on-one conversation with peers, with clients, with customers. If you're in sales, making a strong sales pitch to potential clients. So this program is really applicable to all of those potential audiences. Module 3, preparing your slides. A lot of people, when they are tasked with making a presentation or speaking publicly, the first thing that they typically do is get their PowerPoints together. Well, a PowerPoint is just really a small part of the experience. Let me say that again. PowerPoint is just a small part of the experience that you're trying to deliver. So one thing we talk about is the function of slides, which is sort of elaborates more on what I just said. It's much more than just PowerPoint. More images and fewer words. Gone are the days that people want to look at 6, 7, 8 bullets on a slide. It's too busy. It causes people's eyes to wane over. Fonts, contrast. Module 4 is about preparing yourself. So are you speaking on something for which you are an expert? How do you deal with your nerves? How do you look the part? Attitude, skills, and knowledge. And then module 5 is about delivering the presentation. Passion, proximity, participation, beginning with a punch, and then building rapport, and then having a powerful ending. So this is a very, very comprehensive 2-day program. And I'm excited. I'm super excited to be here with all of you because speaking and communication is my life. It's how I make my money. And if I'm not passionate, if I can't engage, if I can't connect with my audience, then I'm not very good at my craft, right? So again, today we're going to focus really on module 1. This presentation primer. But before I get into that, let me just share with you a brief story. There's always a story, right? And people tend to love stories. I remember way back in my early career when I was in my 20s, I was asked to be an internal consultant for a key initiative of a governmental agency. I was working for the government at that point. And it was a brand new initiative that focused on Six Sigma quality improvement. And I was asked to be one of the leads for my organization. And the first thing I was asked to do by my director was to put together a presentation that communicated to the managers and supervisors about what the program and what the initiative was about. I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I almost froze. I almost froze because I was like, you want me to speak in front of all of these people? And one of the reasons why I had, of course, been speaking, throughout my whole career up to that part, but it was more one-on-one conversations and maybe in small groups, but speaking in front of an audience of maybe 50, 60 people, it's like, oh my goodness. And so why might you think, as you listen to me now, why might you think that I was afraid? Make some entries in chat. Why might you think I was afraid at that point? And perhaps this has been you, asked to do a speech or to present, and you sort of got the knees buckling and the heart rate moving up. Dorina says caught off guard. Yeah, fear of the unknown. Thigh says wasn't prepared. Okay. Any other thoughts? Fear of forgetting something? Yeah, anything else? Uh, Twee. Okay, thank you, Twee. Fear of forgetting something. Anything else come to mind as to why I fear of what people think of me, fear of speaking in front of a crowd? Yeah, absolutely. All of those things came to mind. But what my director didn't know, and what nobody else who I'd worked with knew, was that I have always stuttered all my life. And while it was okay if that showed up in small casual conversations, I mean, my goodness, now you're putting me, front and center on stage in front of an audience of 50, 60 people to explain this initiative. Now, I had time to prepare. I think I had to do it like 2 weeks later, at 2 weeks after the ask. So I said I had plenty of time to prepare. But because I have always stuttered all my life, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to clam up. I'm going to forget everything. I'm going to, skip over my words. They're going to think I'm an idiot. All those things ran through my mind. But I knew I couldn't back out. I knew I could not back out because this was my director. And I also knew that if I can master this, then I can master anything. So I prepared over that 2 weeks, and I practiced and I practiced. I practiced in the mirror, etc. And I did it. And I did it without stuttering a lot. But ladies and gentlemen, today I still stutter. Myself and my older sisters, we were the only 2 out of 5 siblings that grew up stuttering. Now, usually when I'm speaking or teaching or training, it doesn't come out. But on the random chance that it does, I tell myself, so what? This is the authentic me. I don't try to hide it. But like I said, it random comes up because before I stand, or in this case, sit before an audience, I am 125% prepared. So I'm at a much lower level of tension and anxiety, which has been the key to me being able to do these things. 2 weeks ago, I was in front of an audience of 200 people in Tucson, Arizona. A month and a half ago, I was in front of an audience of 200 people. Last week, I was in front of an audience of 20 people in a 5-day leadership development program for CEOs, VPs, CTOs, etc. Fabulous experience. And now, whenever I have the chance to go before an audience, I do it because I love it. I love it. And the thing is, I have practiced this craft so much so that, do I feel like I'm an expert at it? Somewhat. Do I feel like I know everything? Absolutely not. But if I can say one thing, if I can do one thing that influences or persuade any of you or anyone in my audience to do better, be better, speak better, then it's all worth the journey. So let's go into module 1, the presentation primer. Before we do that, though, before we do that, though, I want you to read what's on the slide, and using the chat, I'd like you to make one selection that corresponds to how you would answer this question. How convincing and persuasive are you? How convincing and persuasive are you? So each option has a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And just be honest. Just share. Okay, Tina says a 3. Sean said a 2. Barbara says a 3. Jamie says a 3. Robin says a 2. April says a 4. Monica Molina says 2. All right, so see, we have people all over the place. And see, what I love about this is that those of you who said a 2, you could have said a 4. We wouldn't know the difference. But I love the fact that you're being honest. So I'd like to ask one person to come off mute, and let's start with Sean. Sean, can you come off mute and can you share with the audience why you said a 2? What aspect of your speaking or presenting would you like improvement on? Sean, can you come off mute, please?
Yes, I tend to be a fast speaker. My brain
Ah,
moves at 1,000 miles a minute. My voice only moves at 5 miles an hour.
ah. Thank you. Thank you, Sean, for sharing that. And what's interesting about that is last week when I was in that delivering that leadership program, one critical part of that program is feedback. The participants giving feedback to others, and then us as facilitators giving feedback to the participants. And like I said, I had CFOs, CTOs, directors, senior directors, etc. And it was one woman who stood up to share something that she had written on her flip chart paper. And when she talked, she just went a mile a minute, John. I mean, it was just like, and she had a Southern drawl along with that. Was she clear? Absolutely. Did she speak well? Absolutely. But it was so fast. And so I stopped her. Her name was Laura. I said, Laura, stop. I said, the rate of your speech is distracting from your message and from the impact. I said, so I want you to do the same thing that you just shared with us, but I want you to slow it down by half. And when she did, the impact was 100% different. She came across as much more powerful, as much more credible, as much more authentic, and with much more confidence. Because a lot of times when people speak like this, we perceive them as not being credible, as being nervous, as not having the command of their content. They just want to get it over quickly. Thank you, Sean. Let me go to Robin. Robin Madias, if you could come off mute too, you also said a 2. Can you share with us what aspects of speaking or presenting you'd like to share?
I think for me personally, it's trying to get everything out of my mouth or what's in my head out of my mouth. So I always forget to say something. And then I think 30 minutes later, oh, I forgot to say that. So I think that's what's most nerve-wracking for me.
Okay, thank you. And let me go to someone who said a 4, Monica Roy. Can you come off mute, please? And can you share with us what are some of the things that you do that enable you to come across as rather convincing? Monica Roy, are you off mute?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I'm here.
Okay.
Now that I've listened to all the other folks, I'm thinking maybe I should be a 3 because I think I'm convincing, but I probably get a little too wordy and I talk too quickly sometimes.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I'm probably between a 3 and a 4.
Okay. Well, thank
So
you
I
so much,
appreciate
Monica.
everybody's input. That helps me.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you all, the 3 of you that chimed in. I wish we had time for much more. But no matter whether you're 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, this program is definitely for you. Even me, like I said, I think I'm an expert at coming across as a great speaker and presenter. But does that mean I'm always perfect? Absolutely not. Does that mean that I forget what I was going to say when it comes to a specific bullet point? Absolutely. But you move on. You say, oh, okay. And then you correct and keep going. Because 99.9 times out of 100, your audience doesn't even know you made a mistake. They don't even know. And yet we're in our heads so much that we're supposed to be on to the next point, but we're still reeling about what we forgot. Leave it, park it, and move on. So let's get back a little bit into context. So when we talk about how convincing are you, we need to think about these three areas: character, logic, and emotion. So why do I say that? Well, I say that because the ability today to really stand and deliver a powerful presentation that engages the whole minds. See, speaking and presenting is not just about you spewing out words. You have to touch people. You have to touch them at their core. And you have to touch their mind, engage their whole minds has never been more important than today. Standing up and reciting fiction, that's really passe. Times have changed. So the ability to speak and communicate your message passionately, clearly, and visually is absolutely critical. Because if you're like me, you really want your presentation to leave a mark by really moving your audience to the point where it results in some type of change in behavior, or that the audience really takes action as a result of your presentation, even if it's just a little bit. But you have to truly engage with the audience. True engagement assumes there is some level of emotional involvement or commitment on the part of both the presenter and the audience. But the ultimate responsibility lies in you and me as the presenter. So this 2-day program is really a roadmap for you to successfully create those connections with your audience by designing a powerful, clear, and focused presentation, and do it with impact. So let's talk about being convincing through character. So over 2,000 years ago, and we all heard about Aristotle, but Aristotle was really the first major philosopher to recognize the importance of rhetoric as an essential tool if you want to convince or persuade someone. He broke down the three central elements of persuasion into ethos, pathos, and logos. So these are the three elements of persuasive speaking that we're going to talk about. So let's start with ethos. Notice it says under ethos, ethics and character. So this has to do with your character, your ethics, and being believable when you speak. It helps to increase your credibility with the audience both before and during the presentations, and it increases the likelihood that people will listen to you and trust what you say and your recommendations. See, we are more convincing if the character we portray is wise, respectful, and likable. Hopefully you are like me, that we are willing to listen to someone who believes has great character than listen to words that are coming out of the mouth of someone who's disrespectful and conceited. So ethos or ethos, depending on your chosen pronunciation, means using your credibility or character to convince and influence others. So how do we develop ethos or ethos? By using language that is appropriate for your audience, using grammar and syntax error-free language with the appropriate level of vocabulary, while at the same time showing your level of expertise and knowledge about your topic and relevant credentials. So ethos is all about credibility. Can people trust what you're saying? Do you come across as knowledgeable? People will always make comparisons to you when you are speaking. And what options are you providing them? How are you letting them know that what you are recommending, or I should say that your recommendation is based off of other options that you have also considered? So let's go to pathos. So pathos is all about establishing relation or common ground. I remember there's this great TED Talk. His name is Jamie somebody. I can't remember. But he did a TED Talk in 2010 and he won I think it was $100,000 award for it. And he opened his presentation. Well, his topic was on it was about teach your children about food so that they could eat well. And it was about what we as adults can do to help fight child obesity, right? So he started his speech, and I'm just paraphrasing, by saying, I'm not a doctor. Because remember, he's talking about child obesity and diabetes and all this stuff. So he started his talk with, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. In fact, he's a cook. And he continued on to say, but I do want to talk to you today about child obesity. And then he asked for a show of hands about how many people have kids in their family. Maybe they're your kids, maybe they're nieces, nephews, etc., that would be considered obese. And a lot of people raised their hand. And he said, I want to talk to you about this today because my mom was obese. My father was obese. My father died from illnesses related to morbid obesity. I was an obese child, and this is what it did to me. So by sharing that, he immediately established relationship or common ground with his audience by saying, I've been there. And I shared with all of you why this topic is so important to me. I shared with you the fact that I was asked to do a presentation in my early career, and I was paralyzed at the thought because I stuttered all my life. So I know what it's like to have to stand in front of an audience riddled with fear, riddled with insecurity, lack of confidence. I know what that's like because I've been there. This is also about appealing to emotions, appealing to feelings, sadness, pride, fear of anger, patriotism, love, justice. And what you typically draw out of people through pathos, it can be pity, it can be anger or pride, or people may relate to you because of these experiences of pity and anger and pride. I was mad at myself because. Some examples of pathos. If we do not act now, common ground, in a few years, the beautiful coral reefs and rich marine life will be gone. As we are together right now, thousands of children about the same age as your children around the world might not be getting enough to eat today. So that's pathos. Knowing what your audience cares about and making those connections. And the third area is logos. And this is the one where typically we as adults, we as professionals, we as managers and leaders, think that this is all we need to do is show up and recite facts, figures, stats, etc. Appear to be an authority on a topic. But this final element can be used in any situation. Logos is simply logic. And if it's done right, it can definitely persuade. It can persuade people. When you use reasonable explanations, research results, data, inferences, reasoning to back up your idea. So in order to persuade someone, you can use detail and logics and ask yourself, what logical explanations can back up my opinion? But in addition to just providing evidence, logos also refers to the importance that everything you say fits together, like links in a chain or pieces of a jigsaw story to form a coherent statement, argument, or story. So when you think through and plan your presentation, you want to organize your various points in sequence from the general to the particular, from the general, very broad, to the specific, from the start to the conclusion, with each point building on each previous point. And you could also, I think it's imperative to combine the emotional component. So again, let me go back to the TED Talk that I was just referring to, where the gentleman talk was on reducing childhood obesity, and he talked about his family pathos. He talked about common ground, appealing on empathetic grounds, but he also backed it up. He gave stats, and he compared the United States versus the UK about the number, according to statistics, the rate of childhood obesity in kids in K through 12. He talked about heart disease statistics. He talked about cancer statistics. So he did a great job of coming across as credible, because it was obviously he had done the research. He emotionally appealed to his audience because he had firsthand experience and had relatives who passed away from obesity. And then he also combined it with logic, the facts, the figures, the data on childhood obesity. He also, in his TED Talk, he also had a wheelbarrow full of sugar. Now imagine, a wheelbarrow full of sugar. And he talked about how much more sugar intake children in K through 12 received when schools decided to move from regular milk to chocolate milk. And he just took that wheelbarrow and just started dumping on a mat on the ground. And when he was done sharing his statistics, the impact was incredible, because when you look at that pile of sugar, and it's like, oh my God, that's what children are getting today in their lunches at schools. He also interviewed women who were in the workforce who admitted that they didn't have time to make certain, and fathers too, and make certain meals. So kids were eating fast food for dinner on the regular, not just once a week, but 3, 4, 5 days a week, fast food, and how that was contributing. So he did a brilliant job of combining ethos, pathos, and logos to make his argument for why we as adults need to change the way children eat. I'll pause here. Any questions so far? If so, put your question in chat and Marissa will let me know, or raise your hand. Any questions? Marissa, let me know if there's any questions.
Will do.
Okay, so with that in mind, key point here, bring character, emotion, and logic to your presentation. The question might be, well, Janet, can I just do one, ethos, logic, character? Is one enough? Well, you can be persuasive with just one, just logos or logic. However, you can be more persuasive and have greater connection with your audience if you have all three. But make your presentation appeal to at least one, right? The most brilliant presenters are those who appeal to all three. Okay, so here's some time for you all to do a little bit of work, and we're going to use chat. All right, so what I want you to do is to choose ethos, pathos, or logos. And in chat, when you start to write your answer or your response, start with one of the words, but I want you to come up with other ways than what I've shared here in the presentation, other ways to show logic. Let's start with there. What are some ways to show logic when you are preparing and delivering your presentation? So what I want you to do in the chat, you do something like this. So in chat, you would put like logic, if I can spell, and then you would just type out whatever idea you have for coming up with, for incorporating logic in your presentation. Now, if you want to do ethos, you would just write the word ethos. And what are some other ways to come up with injecting ethos in your presentation? And then the last one is pathos. What are some of the ways to interject or to connect emotionally, show empathy with your audience? So I'd like for you to choose just one and then put a colon and then type in an idea you have and submit it in chat.
Dr. Janet, while we're waiting for people to type that in the chat, there is a question in the chat from Andrea. She asks, when there is passion for a topic, and although it plays a role in persuading the audience with emotions, isn't bias associated with that persuasion?
That's a great question, Andrea, and you can come off mute if you wish. So when you deliver something with passion, well, first of all, I need to understand when you say passion, how passion and bias could be connected. So Andrea, can you come off mute? And the rest of you. I'm sorry?
No, I just said, no, I don't want to come off mute. I'm kidding. It's a joke.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So I guess when someone has a passion for something, they're usually trying to persuade someone, as in the instance that you mentioned concerning obesity. So for instance, those of us that work in the nonprofit world and we're trying to convince someone of our initiatives and to possibly provide funding or to have a collaboration of grants where we have a passion for those particular topics. So there is a bias, right? Similar to, I'll just put it up, similar to a political opponent or someone that's a political individual that's trying to persuade you to vote for their bill. So there's somewhat bias that comes along with that. Is that correct? I guess maybe, I hope that makes sense.
It does make sense. And thank you for the question. So let me use an example. Let's go back into 2020, 2021, when COVID was at its highest. And we saw the stats every single day We saw the stats of every single day of how many people were losing their lives to COVID. And some of us on this call have probably lost loved ones to COVID. And we may have lost loved ones to COVID because they chose not to get vaccinated, as an example. So, and let's say you work for a nonprofit and you're running a COVID you got funding to run a COVID vaccination setup to make it easy for people who want to get vaccinated. And so you go out into the community and you make your pitch. And you're passionate about this. So let's say you lost family members to COVID. You yourself had COVID, but because you had the vaccination, you were okay. And I'm not going to get into that whole market about there's some people don't believe in the vaccination, et cetera. I'm just using this as an example. So when you have family members around you who are dying from this illness, and you also have people in your family who got COVID, but because they were vaccinated, what they experienced was pretty mild. When you are trying to make a plea to the community to come and utilize your service to get vaccinated, you because of what you experienced, you will probably be very passionate in how you speak out to the community. Does that suggest bias because you're passionate? Everybody, you're making a recommendation based on personal experience. You're not railroading anybody to get the vaccination. People still have a choice. All you're doing is making the vaccination accessible, perhaps to people who could not get it any other way. That's the way I look at it. Does that help, Andrea?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And just to piggyback off of that also, someone mentioned, I think that has to do with pathos, but mentioning vulnerability and appeal in the chat, which I guess is similar to what you just explained. So if you have a passion, there's a vulnerability that you're providing to the audience and an appeal in some type of way, I guess, towards them, whatever you're trying to get across, such as the COVID vaccine or to get tested, as you were mentioning, as an example.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're quite welcome. And another example is I recently did a talk on mental health in the Black community, and this is an organization based in Oakland, and they have what's called Mental Health Mondays. They've been having it for over a year. They got funding to do this, and they bring in different speakers on the subject of mental health. And what we share in that forum are instances where we've had folks in our own families who had suffered from mental health but refused to get treatment. We share statistics on mental health in the Black communities specifically, and how not getting help can contribute to using drugs. And a lot of times, for example, when we see homeless people on the street who look like they're all drugged up or doped up, often an immediate conclusion is, oh, well, they're dope addict or they're high on drugs. Whereas maybe, and this is not just for the Black communities, for all communities, but just maybe this was a person who suffered from mental illness, but had no health insurance, could not get any medication. And so they turned to drugs to escape. See, that's a totally different scenario than just immediately when we see people out there talking to themselves, pants halfway down, drug addict. But what led to the drug addiction? And a lot of time it's mental illness that has gone undiagnosed and untreated, right? And so when speaking about those types of things, of course, we're passionate. We want people to get help. We share with them where they can get help, right? And we cannot make a connection with our audience without examples, without facts and figures and without credibility. Is there bias in there? Well, if one wishes to say, well, Janet, maybe you're biased because you think that people who have mental illness should get help so they can live a full and fulfilling life, then I'll say I'm biased. Because I personally know what happens to people when they have a mental health issue and they cannot get help. Just a little bit more, Andrea, but thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. I'm seeing a lot of good stuff in the chat. Mark says pathos, talking about a personal story that shows your vulnerability and appeal. Absolutely. Developing trust. Dorena says pathos. You can develop trust with people by relating with them and acknowledging their fears. And Dorena says she was a first responder in 2021 and had to speak to scared people every day. I knew how they felt, so could relate. Absolutely. I have a niece who works for Kaiser in San Francisco, and she's a respiratory therapist. Not many people knew about the value of respiratory therapists until COVID. And what she experienced, the trauma, the death, having to educate doctors on how to use these, forgot the name of these type of respiratory equipment, and just coming home every day and then going back to that. How do you think she felt when she went to talk to people about the importance of getting vaccinated? Was she biased toward the vaccination? Probably, but she saw the other side of it. Pathos storytelling. Shira says storytelling. Sean says, go through a now, like, problem, solution flow, what they have now, what item, why it works, etc. So yes, so these are all ways that, and I would encourage all of you, as you go forward after today, to do two things. One, just try to incorporate one of these. Ethos, pathos, logos. If you're not already doing that, just try to incorporate one of these into your next presentation, your next speech. See how it feels. And two, let CPS Training Center know that you are interested in the full 2-day program. And I'll show you how to do that at the end, and so will Marissa. Okay, so let me turn off on my chat and let me erase that. Go away, go away, go away. Annotate, clear all annotations. Okay, all right. Annotation off. All right, here we go. All right, 3 presentation principles, and I know we're nearing our time, so I'm just going to go through these very quickly. 1 is focus, 2 is contrast, and 3 is unity. Focus. Focus about having one core message for the whole enchilada. One core message for the whole presentation. One core message for each slide. So each slide needs to be reflected back to the purpose of the presentation. So what's the focus? I've seen so many people stand up to give a speech or a presentation, and they're all over the map. It's like, okay, I know you're trying to tell us something, but what is it? So focus, one core message. And then contrast. See, we're hardwired to know differences. And this just makes your presentation or your speech even more impactful. And even if you've given a speech without PowerPoint slides, you can still make contrasts by sharing evidence, data, before and after. Compare big and small, show opposition, before and after, black and white. Nothing's always black and white. Maybe it is. So contrast, allow people to show how what you're saying is different from what others have said. And then unity. Create a story, because people like stories, with a beginning and an ending to make your message memorable. It has to come together to produce a unified whole. Consistency in each slide through the whole presentation must be maintained. You don't want to end your presentation and somebody, with people thinking, what was she talking about? What was her salient point? So in here today, in this 1 hour, we focus on what Aristotle posited, that to be persuasive, ultimately, for optimally persuasive, you have to address the three: logos, ethos, pathos. And we talked about what each of those meant. You shared on a scale of 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5, where you thought you were on that particular scale. You also shared in chat some ideas for integrating ethos, pathos, and logos into your presentation. That was our focus. And each slide built on one another. I shared with you stories about why this is so important to me and how I was and still am a stutterer. But yet I get paid to speak publicly. I get paid to train. I get paid to facilitate. I get paid to address audience, 100, 200 plus people. And I know the impact of what this stuff does to add to the credibility and the engagement of your audience. So with that, I'm going to stop and ask if there's any questions. And I thank you all for being engaged. For more information on this course and others, contact the CPS HR Training Center. Their email is cpshrtrainingcenter@cpshr.us. This would be a new course. So if you go out there and look, it's not there. But if there's enough interest in it, we will make it there. And I've shared with you at the very beginning what the entire program consists of. It's very, very comprehensive. So I will stop sharing there and turn it back over to Marissa.